This is Anarchast.
Hey party people, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I'm in Acapulco, Mexico, and we're talking to Amanda Billyrock, and she's a fairly well-known YouTuber, and she's interviewed people like Ron Paul, and she's an anarchist, and let's find out why. So Amanda, how did you become an anarchist?
I suppose through a process of deductive logic. Well, no, that's a really tool thing to say. No, I stumbled into, I guess, curiosity land maybe 2 years ago with the whole economy stuff. People were like, the economy is so bad, and I was like, what does that mean? And so I just started researching, and one thing led to another, and Ron Paul really helped me. He was kind of like my gateway. And I will forever, be grateful to him for that. And yeah, and then after that, I stumbled onto the Austrians, and that pretty much got me here.
And by Austrians, I don't think you mean people from Austria, but people who pay attention to Austrian economics.
Yeah, indeed, yes. Yeah, actually, I was fortunate enough to go to Mises University last summer, 2012, and that just like brains shooting out my ears, hitting floor, because it just painted the perfect picture. It answered all of those questions that people have, like, how would the roads get built, and how would defense be provided, and justice and police and all of that. And I found out at Mises U that, not only can the market provide those things, but it can provide them better and more cheaply, and hey, without threats of violence.
Yeah, totally. Did you see this recent video from the Swedish central bank as a commercial?
No, okay. What is it?
Oh my God, you're going to love this. I'm going to put this in the links down below because it's so hilarious. It's from the Swedish central bank, and it starts off with this guy, and he's riding his bike, and the roads are like really muddy, like cars are like spinning out because they can't go anywhere, and he just rides his bike through town, and posters are ripped off the wall, and it's all kind of dirty, and there's garbage flying around. Then they go to the soccer field, and they're trying to play soccer, but there's these giant weeds growing in their field, and they're trying to play through the weeds. And the whole point of the whole thing was, see, without taxation, without theft, there's no way we could mow these soccer fields. These kids would just never figure out any way to get this done.
Really? And that came from a bank?
Yeah, the Swedish central bank. Or sorry, I correct myself. It came from the IRS, the Swedish version of the IRS. So they were basically trying to say that without us, you're going to have muddy roads. And so I posted a comment on some website. I just said, well, at least now we have the answer to, can we have roads without taxes? And the answer is yes, but they'll just be really, really muddy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So
it's so patronizing, like that is an insult to a thinking adult. It really is so patronizing, like, you poor serfs, humans were smart enough to figure out how to do open heart surgery, and humans were smart enough to figure out how to do what we're doing right now. Look at a screen and see a person on the other side of the world and actually talk to them. And really, those same humans can't figure out how to build their own roads. Like, really. It's just so patronizing.
The real patronizing part is the money they used to make the commercial was stolen from the people that it was targeted at.
They paid to be insulted.
Yeah, that's my biggest pet peeve with federal government commercials or local government commercials is that's your money, so they're taking money from you to give you propaganda. It's like the ultimate insult.
Wow. Well, yeah, I guess I don't have to watch it now. You just gave me the basic rundown. Now I can just skip that and do something more important.
Well, you got to see it because it's so hilarious, especially when they're trying to play soccer in this field. It's like, throughout the whole video, no one's working. It's like, hey, why not mow the field? Or why doesn't the shop owner who has that road in front of his place get rid of that 3 inches of mud that's on the street? It's not actually anachronistic thinking. This whole status idea is anachronistic. I feel really sorry and embarrassed for people who still believe in these systems because they're just showing themselves to be more and more false, and they just don't make any sense in today's world, not with what we have today. Maybe they made sense 100 years ago. I don't know. I wasn't there. But definitely in today's world with the internet and things like that, which of course the government will say they created the internet. That's what Al Gore always says. But that's not true at all. And as these systems collapse, we're really going to have an opportunity to people will really realize what these statist systems are all about, just like the people in the Soviet Union found out over decades how all this centrally planning works. It doesn't work out at all. It's basically just robbing people until they're poor, and once the system collapses, people will really wake up. So I think that's going to be our real opportunity in the next few years, or at least the next decade for sure, is as these systems collapse.
I like the little saying that people have that says the state breaks both of your legs, hands you a crutch, and then says, without us, you couldn't walk.
Yeah, that was Harry Brown, and he passed away now.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Harry Brown.
Yeah, he was
full
great.
Of sound bites.
Yeah, he was way ahead of his time. He was a great guy. And this, this is the government. This is what they do. And most people are waking up. Not a lot, obviously, as you can see by the amount of views on this video below. It's not millions of people yet, but I really believe that it's going to get to that in the next few years. So I think we're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, I thankfully, recently came out of my cynical libertarian phase, because that one really got me down. And I didn't know if I would ever come out of it. And I was getting ready to like hole up in, my room for the rest of my life, like with my Rothbard in a like tattered old sweater and stale coffee, muttering to myself, those goddamn statists. But then I came out of that, and yeah, so now I also have hope.
Yeah, there's highs and lows when you're on our side of the fence. I go through it as well. I don't quite batter down and hold and quiver with Rothbard in my bed or anything, but I do have days where it's like, are we even getting through to people? But I see hope way more than I see non-hope. And this is not Obama's hope in chains, CHAINS. This is real hope. And that's really the hope. And you saw what happened with Ron Paul, of course. He made a difference. He was actually he was in the debates. He was actually considered for president of the U.S. That would have been unheard of 10 years ago. And so there's a lot going on.
Something that I really look to for like guidance and hope is people like Adam Kokesh and like Jeffrey Tucker, who are always talking about how technology itself will eventually render the state completely, irrelevant, if nothing else. Like, I know that when I was co-hosting Adam versus the Man last month, he was talking about 3D printers all the time, and it was super cool. And actually, one of the guests we booked was Cody Wilson down from University of Texas at Austin. I forget how they call their UT systems. But yeah, he's the one who's designing like the fully printable handgun. And this kid is in his mid-20s, just designing a printable handgun, that's all. And yeah, like technology, it's going to save us. If we're lucky.
Totally, and actually technology has always been saving us through all this human history. We only really know about 5,000 years, but after the printing press, that changed everything. And all of a sudden people could get access to information. And then of course the Industrial Revolution, that changed a lot. And now look where we are today. We can travel around the world in less than 24 hours in a reclining chair. We can talk to each other like we're talking right now, just like we're right next to each other. These are the technologies, and that's what's actually making the government very scared. And they realize that this is going to be their downfall, and there's really not much they can do to stop it now. There's too many 13-year-old boys around the world, in Russia and Latvia and Kazakhstan and China, and these little boys, young boys, they're really good at what they do, and the government isn't, because they're the government. No one really amazing goes and works for the government. I don't know what kind of psychological problems you would have if you were an amazing person and you didn't want to work in the free market. You wanted to work for the government instead. And so now you look, Obama's been trying to pass CISPA and SOPA and all these things, and it was actually, I forget the name of the senator, one of those totally criminal senators, who said that, even if we can't get this through, we can just get it through on an executive order. And that's what recently happened. It was just a week or two ago that Obama pushed through something like CISPA, and it was never reported in the mainstream media. But they're trying to basically tighten the chains on the internet and shut people like us down, but they're not going to be able to. We have millions of 13-year-old boys, and probably girls too, I hope, on our side. And you can't stop that. This momentum is unstoppable.
Yeah, I remember when I first found out about that group Anonymous, like those hackers, and I remember being so intrigued by them, and I thought, they can't be that anonymous. I have to find them. How will I find them if they're so anonymous? And so I started searching. I finally stumbled onto one of their sites, or not one of their sites, obviously, but like a site that has a lot of threads of like anonymous members, kind of, sort of, whatever. But I just remember thinking that is so super awesome. And like, I think they divert their attention to a lot of, useless things, like, their whole like battle with the Westboro Baptists, like it's not a worthwhile battle. Like, those people are bigoted, hateful people, but they're not like worth your super awesome computer skills. Like stick with, shutting down people who won't take donations for WikiLeaks, stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And we had a guy named Smuggler on Anarchast before, and he talked quite a bit about these sort of things. And I think he was basically saying that Anonymous isn't really one group or one person. It's sort of a lot of different people. And it's really great what they're doing, and I definitely support them. Getting on a little bit, we're just completing our Young, Beautiful Female Anarchist Month, which I'm really sad and sorry to see go. And we'll pretty soon we'll have to start interviewing old, fat, white guys again, and that's not going to be good for ratings. But let me ask you from a female perspective, is your family on board with these kind of things? Or are they more statist? And your friends as well?
I think that most of my friends, I actually don't have like that many, but they're more in the, I don't really care because I don't believe that it affects me stage. And that's not a bad place to be. If you don't go out and vote, like, that's awesome. I wish nothing more from you other than for you to just like not vote. Not that voting really counts, but when people vote, they feel that they want to start, getting in the system and get strings pulled in their direction and, start manipulating others for their own advantage, which is all participating in government is. But my family actually, when I started, when my fire lit up or whatever about 2 years ago, at first they were kind of amused and they were like, oh, Amanda, you are a crazy Ron Pauler, you silly goose. But then, after they heard me, just spout off about everything that I think is wonderful in the world, aka all things liberty, they really started to grasp onto it and say, hey, I do desire to be free. How strange that the desire to be free is inherent within me as a sovereign being. And so, yeah, they're on board and we have totally brilliant, fulfilling discussions around the kitchen table, and it's great.
That is great. And yeah, using the words like anarchy and stuff sometimes don't help. They actually hurt with some people. So if you went up to your family member and said, hey, I'm an anarchist, that's going to scare them because they've heard all these bad things about anarchists, mostly all incorrect. So I think it's almost better just to question them about their beliefs and say, so you're going to vote, why? And they'll say, well, I want this to get in. And yeah, go ahead.
It was so wild. Okay, I have a 19-year-old sister, and she sent me an email a little while ago, and like her spark is lit. Like, it is lit. And she sent me an email a little while ago, and she said, I don't remember where she got the idea. She got it from someone. It may have been Molyneux. I think one of my sisters watched Molyneux and then told the 19-year-old sister about it. Whatever, aside. She said, it's a lot easier to talk about liberty if instead of trying to sell it, you ask the other person to sell the benefits and the glories of statism.
Yeah, good luck.
Like, that's a much shorter conversation to have.
Yeah, totally. You look at the last century and over 200 million people were killed by their own government. So when people say that us anarchists are crazy and this idea we have is crazy, well, they're the crazy ones for still trying these systems, which have been proven by evidence. Evidence right now, even in the US, that's theft, taxes theft. So many people, hundreds of millions of people are getting robbed every month, armed robbed. They don't see the gun, but the gun is there. If they don't pay it, they'll find out pretty quick. They're just renting their own homes with property taxes. all kinds of things, all the regulations and laws that are totally arbitrary, like marijuana, one of the most healthy, best plants ever, and it will actually expand your mind somewhat. And if you haven't done it, I definitely would advise you to try it. It's excellent, and it will open your mind a little bit. And that's one of the things the governments don't like about it, other than the fact that it cures cancer, and it's much healthier than cigarettes or alcohol or anything like that, which I'm sitting here smoking and drinking a Jugo de Jamaica, which is spelled like Jamaica in Mexico with gin. But I actually never really got too much into marijuana. It kind of spaces me out, makes me paranoid. But for a lot of people, it really kind of opens their mind. And almost every rock band or any kind of music you like, almost all of them except for the classical people and maybe some country people, most of those albums were done on mind-altering substances. And mind-altering substances can be very good. We need people's minds to be altered. They're very cloistered, they're very sequestered, they're very closed-minded. And one of the things I find is when I have a drink or if I have a puff of marijuana or something, I start thinking about different things. You get outside of your headspace.
Yeah, I remember when Ron Paul started referring to the hemp industry, the now, killed hemp industry as far as legality, as green jobs, like a creator of green jobs. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. And then, as when you were talking about the mind-altering substances causing creativity, I remember shortly after Steve Jobs died, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but there was like a few very inconspicuously placed stories in some media outlets where it says, by the way, Steve Jobs said that using LSD was one of the best things he ever did. And I just remember thinking, wow, this man who has literally brought about a step forward in the salvation of humanity as far as our ability to communicate with one another like that, he did LSD. Not saying that I would ever do that, but that was a wow moment for me.
Yeah, similar thing to LSD is mushrooms, and I've done those. Funny story in Japan, all things like marijuana and all that are actually super illegal. You can almost get the death penalty if you're caught with them. But magic mushrooms, which are just mushrooms, are totally legal. You can buy them on the street in Tokyo. So I took some one night, and about 12 hours later, I was half naked on the subway thinking deep thoughts. It could be pretty wild. But it also is very interesting, and actually the psychiatric profession used to experiment with all these kind of things because it can give insights into the mind. But of course now with the fascist US government system and most Western governments, they only want you to take these toxic chemicals, these horrible things that they make in laboratories like Adderall or Prozac, and all the things that all the people who shoot up schools are always on. This is the terrible way it's going. It's just terrible, this fascist system.
Yeah, I remember after the, Connecticut shooting, a lot of people on Facebook were coming out with, tell the FDA to blah, blah, blah this, and tell the government, sign the petition to blah, blah, blah this.
Petitions, I hate petitions.
And I'm just thinking, like, seriously, like, healthcare isn't regulated enough. Like, yes, it ought to be up to the consumer. Because in a free market, if you want a drug of some kind, you review it, you talk to the producer, you sign a contract, if you feel that there's risk involved, you sign a contract acknowledging that you bear the responsibility for the risks. And so, that's where the discussion needs to go. Not so much, libertarians being like, well, I think all of these drugs are wrong, and so that means, that they should not exist. No, that's not the stance that we need to be taking. The stance is these drugs may be what they may, and what's important is that on the free market we could contract and bear the risks ourselves.
Totally. I remember when I was younger, I forget the exact situation. I went in somewhere and they said they couldn't give it to me because there was they could be held liable, and I'm like, well, let me sign a contract and I'll just say you're not held liable. Very, very easy. These things can be all worked out by the free market. And talking about petitions, oh my God, I hate petitions. And I hate hearing people go, call your congressman. It's like, call your slave master and ask him, can you please do something you'd like to do? That never works anyway, obviously. It's just really a symptom of the slave mind of so many people nowadays. Oh, we need to ask them and let's sign our name on a petition and maybe they'll listen to us. No, just ignore them. They'll go away if you stop paying them.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the last, and maybe the only, no, but the last time I advocated for, calling your congressman or whatever was, during the Ron Paul campaign, because that was my awakening, and I was all there for that. And it was when they were going to, or getting closer to passing the, audit the Fed bill. And I made a video and I said, please everyone call your senators and representatives so we can get this passed. And I think even then I knew it was an exercise in futility. But during the campaign, I was absolutely committed to doing what I could. And at the time, I wasn't even an anarchist. And so I didn't see it as being immoral. But yeah.
Well, it's not immoral so much as it's just a slave mentality that you have to ask for permission to do something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously it's a progression. So many people go through that progression.
Make my chains a little less heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. And people go through that progression. Of course, if they're statists, the usual first thing they go to is sort of minarchist or constitutionalist. And then very quickly after that, they start, if they're a thinking person, they soon realize it's all a crazy system and we should all just be our own government.
Yeah.
So
Well, one of the wackiest arguments I hear from people is, without a giant state military, how would we protect, from invasions of, the Hitlers of the world? And it's just like, okay, you can't take over the lives of millions and millions of people with an invasion without a state structure. That's the only way you can control millions and millions of people, if you take over their already existing state structure. If the territory currently known as the United States of America were completely decentralized into tens of millions of pieces of private property, pretty hard to control. And what's more, if it were devised, or rather divided into such, the United States of America would cease to become the terrorist threat to all countries of the world like it currently is. So there would be less cause for people wanting to invade.
yeah, no one really wants to invade. You talk to anyone. I've traveled to 100 countries. I don't even have to ask because I can tell. But if I would ask, I'm sure I'd say, hey, do you feel like going to the U.S. and start shooting people? They'd be like, why would I do that? I'm here unless they're attacking me. But really, that's the old anachronistic way. That's the statist way, and that includes a lot of war. Because mostly, if you have these statist systems, you have a giant tax base. And what those countries want to do is take over that tax base. But if you get rid of that, there's really no reason to go and attack anywhere. And you really couldn't. There's just no way.
Why would you? And what would there be to gain?
That's right, especially today in today's world. This is why I'm saying all statist stuff is anachronistic. It's you're living in the past, man. It's like, what would you do? Let's say someone came. I'm sitting here in Acapulco right now. Let's say a bunch of guys from, pick a country that people think are going to attack Iran, which is not going to happen. But let's say they come in here and they're like, hey, we want you to be Muslim. A bunch of people here be like, they put down their beer and they're like, get out of here, stop it. And, it's just stupid. It won't work. It can't work. And, one of my favorite sayings that you still hear from people who are living in the past is, well, if we didn't go to World War II, we'd all be speaking German right now. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't force people to speak a language, especially in today's world where it's so diverse and it's so easy to move and you have access to so many things. And I always like to bring up with them, well, it's a good thing that the U.S., when they separated from England, it's a good thing that the U.S. wanted, we'd all be speaking English right now.
Yeah, and not to mention that it was U.S. involvement in World War I that helped set the stage for World War II, just little bits of factual history and such.
Yeah, there actually is a reason people do things. Most people don't know that in the U.S. They watch their news and they attacked us. And there's no reason. They just hate us for our freedom, which we don't have.
Yeah. I was so disgusted, whatever it was a few weeks ago at the Oscars, when the biggest Oscar nominees were 3 war propaganda films, Lincoln, Zero Dark 30, and Argo. So if that in and of itself isn't disgusting enough, the wife of the drone bomber himself hands out the award for best propaganda film of the year. people say things like, oh, how were people led into helping out the Nazis? How did people allow the Holocaust to happen? How did they join up with the Nazis? Didn't they see the writing on the walls? And it's like, Michelle Obama just handed out the award for War Propaganda Film of the Year. Like Goebbels. Nazi Goebbels never had it so good. Minister of Propaganda never had it so good as they did at the fascist Oscars this year. It's like writing on the wall. Don't talk to me about writing on the wall.
Yeah, totally. Goebbels wishes he had it as good as the U.S. They've really got it down to an art of propaganda. And I actually didn't watch the Oscars. I didn't even know it was on. I don't really pay attention to all that kind of stuff.
No, I didn't either. Someone just posted about it. And when I saw Michelle Obama's hideous face, I clicked on the article to see what it was all about. And then after I read it, went and puked all over myself. And yeah.
Yeah, I basically did the same thing. So someone forwarded me a YouTube video of just Michelle Odrombaum giving out a award. And it was so creepy. It was almost like watching something from the past. Like all those guys with those uniforms on, and guys and girls, of course, of every color. And they're all kind of sort of mingling and all with these fake smiles on their face. And then they sort of formed perfectly into a circle around her. And she came up like she was some queen or something. I was just laughing, actually, but I was a little bit scared.
It's super creepy.
It was just creepy, yeah. It just creeped the hell out of me.
Yeah. And I'm so finished with Hollywood. And it's not the libertarian position to see people in groups and to generalize. I understand that. Obviously, there are people in Hollywood who aren't pro-war. Well, actually, I don't know that. But it's not in the libertarian mindset to see people in groups. But show me, Hollywood people, that you are not pro-war by getting up and walking out of the Oscars when you see fascist propaganda being presented. I know that not every Hollywood actor was in the Demand a Plan film on YouTube, obviously. Obviously. Not everything that comes out of Hollywood is pro-war, obviously. But also, there's not a lot coming out of it that's anti-war, if any. And so I'm just so finished with Hollywood. Really, these days, all I watch is South Park. That's actually all I watch. And now Comedy Central, is it run by a major Hollywood studio? That I don't know. I would have to find out. But that's really all I watch. It keeps me sane.
Yeah, me too. I stopped watching movies probably 5 years ago. I only watch movies that my libertarian or anarchist friends say to me, this is a good movie that doesn't have the cop or the president as the hero every single time. And so some of the only movies I've watched probably in the last few years is just The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, which is really a statement against the state. The Ring of Power is the state, in my opinion, in that book or movies. And I don't watch too many others. I watch V for Vendetta, of course, those sort of things. But my wife asked me, she goes, hey, let's go to the theater. And I'm like, I can't do it. I'm going to see so many things that are just so wrong, in my opinion, that it'll just frustrate me more than anything. And again, though, the internet is changing things because you can put out your own movies now. It doesn't really cost a lot to make a decent movie. You can actually make a decent movie on a camcorder, which are all very high tech now, for less than $1 million. And you can actually crowd or fundraise those movies. And they'll get spread.
Less than $1 million.
Yeah. Like even $100,000, even $5,000. I've seen some decent movies done for basically nothing. And that also scares the status. And, the funny thing about me is I don't read fiction books much anymore, and I don't watch fiction movies too much anymore because real life to me is much more bizarre. All the stuff that's going on is you could never make this stuff up. For example, this week, I don't know if you heard about this, Dennis Rodman, who's completely insane. He's a total alcoholic, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's got major issues. And he went over to North Korea, and he's now best friends with little Kim Jong-un. And Dennis Rodman now calls him his best friend for life. They go to North Korean baseball games together. And I just saw this morning that Kim Jong-un is now saying that maybe he's going to change because of Dennis Rodman Like, this is bizarre. Like, who would have thought? Of course, though, if you think about it, sending over a Secretary of State and basically saying, we'll bomb you if you don't do something, that's not going to work too well. But you send over a crazy guy and he's kind of fun and he gets all the girls, and Kim Jong-un's like, hey, maybe I do like this kind of lifestyle. You know, maybe we should send like Richard Simmons over to Cuba, you know, another crazy guy, and have him talk to the Castros and just go, hey, you know, stop this communist stuff. So yeah, it's been great talking to you, Amanda, and I know you have a YouTube channel, and I don't know if you have anything else you want to let people know, but it's really great and people should subscribe to it, and please let them know where they can get more info.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is youtube.com/abillyrock. My Facebook, I'm maxed out on my friends. Well, actually, probably every day, like 2 people unfriend me. So if you do friend request me, actually, there probably will open up a spot, 2 a day anyway. But yeah, it's just Amanda Billyrock. I'm definitely the only one on Facebook. And then you can follow me on Twitter, also at abillyrock.
Cool, very popular girl, and thanks for being on with us. So this has been another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.